Why don't we start off with you, Warren, and then given the direction of the economy, the increasing costs in housing, the dollar going down, the government deficits that are being talked about, what sort of risk are we facing in terms of the economic bubble? And I know sometimes when we live in the world in which we live, we really don't realize what's happened perhaps in other parts of Canada. But I think this question's a good one because we know what's happened to the housing market here, particularly in Markham and throughout the GTA. And I guess the question would be, how would this affect our major growth plans?
Well, if you look forward, I think we've got a good 2 or 3 year run in terms of expansion in the U.S. And there's no province that depends more on the U.S. than Ontario. And we also have in the GTA a dynamic of growth that is built in because of the size of the population and the networks that exist internally. So we're not only selling to the U.S. and outside the country, but we actually have major markets across the country. And the country is pretty resilient in some respects. But the long-term game plan, I think, for Ontario has to be, as you have been doing with your missions, is to figure out how we get into global markets in a much more serious way. Because they are, in my view, the markets of the future, simply because that's where the wealth is going to be created, that's where the populations are greatest. Do I worry about a meltdown in the housing market? I could go on for the next hour telling you what I think. I won't. In general, I think the demographics are strong enough to keep it reasonably buoyant, but we have had one of the strongest expansions in the housing market in our history. And inevitably, I think in certain segments, and I could talk to you about micro condos and things like that, I think we're going to have a bit of a pause, a bit of a pullback. But as long as we are growing as an economy, as long as we are creating jobs, then overall, the infrastructure, the housing infrastructure and the like will continue to do reasonably well.
David, this next question is for you, and I want to let you know I did not send the question in while I was sitting up at the panel, but you're doing some amazing work at Seneca that was evidenced through the various initiatives that we saw in the videos. How can we encourage Seneca's best grads to choose Markham as their preferred place to work and start their business?
Well, I mean, let me be very practical, and it actually picks on something that President Shukri was talking about, in the context of what we're trying to do with our students and expose them to the world of work while they're students, not something that's kept in, the real world's kept away from them, but in fact it's brought onto the campus. But even more importantly, that they get opportunities while they're studying to, in those co-op terms, those internships, those placements, and so on. There are some firms that are fantastic at understanding the importance of offering those opportunities for students. I mean, we can't replace 10 or 15 years of work experience, but at least we can, with your help, provide students with some real-world, on-the-job, work-integrated learning while they're studying. And not enough, let's be blunt, not enough businesses are doing that. Some are doing great jobs, not enough are doing it. Those are the kinds of things that build loyalty. Those are the kinds of things that build people's sense of place, and those are things that can turn people into permanent residents and permanent employees and permanent workers in Markham. On the entrepreneurial side, I mean, I think we're on the right track, and we've built a super infrastructure with kind of venture lab at the heart of it, in the ecosystem of innovation. All those partners around it. We just need to continue to do it more and more and more. Obviously, one of the things that every young Canadian entrepreneur worries about is that valley of death. As entrepreneurs, you go through that, go to that certain point of growth, and then really find that's the kind of thing we have to pull together and work on.
Now, it is part of the curriculum when students are in the classroom. You do let them know that we do have the lowest industrial commercial tax rate in the GTA, right? That is part of the information you pass on.
We run your video constantly.
Okay,
yes.
I wondered why they ran the other way when they saw me. Okay. There's another question here for Warren, and Canada, as other countries are, in the process of firming up their participation in the free trade agreement with the TransPacific Partnership. Well, this was the question: how can Markham businesses profit from these trade agreements? While you're talking about how can they benefit, where do we find the silver lining in these agreements for our business community?
Okay, we're involved in a number of trade agreements. There's a European one, the Trans-Pacific Partnership is another. We've done a bilateral with Korea. I think at the very heart, the first step is to look at them as importantly defensive. Because if we are not in, we will find that other competitors will have an edge. We saw that with the U.S. entering a Korean a bilateral, where all of a sudden a number of Canadian firms were put at a disadvantage. So the idea of should we be in or should we be out is a non-starter in my view. We have to be in because that is the table stakes in the game. The other thing is that these agreements are still a long way off. I mean, before they get practical benefit and you got 5-year phase-ins and 10-year phase-ins or even longer, but they create an environment of opportunity if you are competitive. It doesn't give you a market. It allows you to explore and enter a market. Inevitably, it's a two-way street. Who's going to sign an agreement with Canada saying, okay, come and take our market, and no, we're not interested in your market? It's just not going to happen. But if we look at it creatively, and you've seen some of the innovation that's occurring here, and if we have the idea or the product that sells, I think quite honestly that we are able to open up a world of opportunity for Markham and for Canada.
Well, I want to say we've come to a close for tonight's session, and I think we've taken an incredible step forward in revisiting our economic strategy and certainly reviewing the success that we've had, learning more about what's happening. And I think one of the challenges that we face in this community is being able to get all of this information out there so that the business community knows what's going on, and certainly the young people in our community know the programs that are truly available within their community and about to be available through the expansion of York University in our community. And I think maybe this question to some degree, it's a general one. Wasn't necessarily for our panel, I suppose, but what could we be doing to create the Silicon Valley here in Markham? And I have to say, we're doing it. You saw the slide that Derek put up compared to other communities in Ontario and across Canada. We're not stopping. We're not resting on our laurels. And I know that, and I'm not going to single them out tonight, but I know a municipality a few years ago in the province of Ontario wanted to have an official designation through the provincial legislature that they were the innovation and an ICT hub for Ontario. And after we presented all the data and the information about the number of companies, the jobs, and the activity that was happening here, that really didn't go forward. So we call ourselves Canada's high-tech capital. It's because of the number of companies that are here. And we do get referred to actually from organizations outside of our jurisdiction as Canada's Silicon Valley. So we're doing it. We're going to continue to work with all the associations. Derek talked about collaboration. We do it every day, and we have to build on that. So one more time, if you could just show your appreciation to Dr. Shukri, Mr. Brilton, Mr. Agnew, and Mr. Justin. What an incredible resource that we've been able to access tonight. Thank you.